and welcome to this bonus episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. My special guest is Victor Guisfredi, and he's no stranger to this podcast. He was on season 2 talking about his Amazon best-selling book, No Grail Without Dragons. Victor's work deeply aligns with what this show is all about, man. Transformation, healing, and becoming the best version of yourself in love and in life. As an author and coach, Victor has a passion for understanding how to achieve more with less. For over 20 years, he's studied mindset, the habits of overachievers, and the root causes of lasting transformation, helping people to identify what's really sabotaging their results and develop strategies to create lasting change. Victor's here to talk about his new book, 12 Rules for Marriage, a blueprint for sustainable love. We'll be talking about the inner journey behind his book and what it really takes to transform old wounds into wisdom. So stick around. You just might learn something. It's the Men on the Path to Love podcast. Welcome once again to Men on the Path to Love, Victor. So good to see you again, man.
Likewise, Bill. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I was checking out my episodes, and the last time we spoke was season 2, and it was about a year and a half ago. And that's when you were talking about your book, No Grails Without Dragons. And here you are with a brand new book, 12 Rules for Marriage, a blueprint for sustainable love. I love what you're doing. I'm on this love mission, and you're right there with me, man. And for those listeners who maybe not have heard the previous episode, give us the story of your journey up to where you are now. What led you to writing these books?
Well, I am a regular, everyday, normal guy who has pursued a sustainable relationship ever since I'm a teenager. I've always had this craving for loving and being loved. And that took me along many different paths in life, which include entrepreneurship, playing music, competing in extreme sports. But it's a life-changing situation that happened in 2020 when within a few months, I got divorced. I became the full-time parent of my 2 kids. And I also got laid off from a corporate job, which I thought I was going to have for many years. So within just a few months, my life flipped upside down. And until about a year, I found myself at the very, very rock bottom. And to the point that living was almost optional. And Carl Jung said once that the thought of suicide will get you through many dark nights, because sometimes when you're in that spot where you have lost it all, including your hope and your vision for the future, and even your willingness to keep going, because I by that time I had been divorced twice. I had launched a few companies and also lost a few companies, among other things. You start wondering, well, what's the point of it all, right? What is it that we're here to do, and why are we going to do that? And I had an option with my life insurance policy. I think it was anywhere between 500,000 and $1 million. I forgot now. And that seemed pretty enticing, because I said, well, maybe I can end my suffering. Maybe I was 36 at the time. So I said, what am I looking forward to? Another 35, 40 years of this emotional hell. I'm sort of dragging my kids down with this, and maybe they can benefit from this payout. I stop suffering and the problem is solved. But I found myself coming to find my purpose, and I came to the conclusion that not only I will be doing a disservice to my children by taking the easy way out, but also they will have to go to a lot of the same situations and heartbreaks and suffering, sort of to end up at the same place. I said, well, why not put what I've learned through a hard knock life into a book, and then just share my knowledge with them? Because after all, I think that we as a race, as a human race, that's how we evolve. We learn from our ancestors what to do and what not to do, what the things that work and the things that don't, and then just get on that path. So I wrote No Grail Without Dragons. It took me about a little over a year to write it and another few months to edit it because I did it all myself. And that was just my first step into this writing journey. And now I just finished my new book, which is 12 Rules for Marriage.
Yeah, so it sounds like that your writing was like cathartic for you, like not only to get you out of that dark place and also leaving a legacy for your kids and for the rest of us out here by writing that book.
Yeah, when you hear an artist say that they put blood and tears into a piece of work, that's not a metaphor. That's
Yeah.
a literal thing. And yes, I got to heal. I got to see things from a different perspective. And I realized the first book was originally intended just for my kids
Mhm.
because it's a collection of the biggest lessons that I've learned. It doesn't really have a timeline or a theme. It's just, hey, this is the hardest lessons I've learned in life. Don't make the same mistakes.
Mhm.
Um, but then people started showing interest, and the people around me said, hey, this can help me too. And the word spread out. And that's how it ended up being a published book. And that's also what motivated me to write this new book, because I finally, after so many years, and I'm talking about over 2 decades of obsessively researching into psychology and also making mistakes in real life, right? Because theory doesn't always translate into real life experience.
Sure.
So finally, 2 divorces, I got married again, and I'm at the place where I've always wanted to be in that passionate and sustainable and loving relationship that I can say that I can probably happily die with and make it until death do us part.
Well, I'm listening to your story, Victor, and it just, I feel like we've just led these parallel lives. I've been through 3 divorces and now almost 17 years into my current marriage, and it just keeps getting stronger and better and amazing. And that's my motivation too, is to share this with others, to say, hey, this can work. No matter how dark it gets, we can make these relationships work. So let's get into your book, 12 Rules for Marriage. And this is really about sustaining the relationship. Take us through this journey here.
Yeah, so 12 Rules of Marriage is born from the lessons that really made a drastic change in my relationships,
Mhm.
and also the things that you can only learn from losing everything, right? Because I'm sure you've experienced it through your divorces. When you're before the divorce, the person you are before the divorce thinks that the grass could be greener on the other side. Sometimes not. Maybe it's your partner who thinks the grass is going to be greener on the other side.
Mhm.
But we're ignorant or blind to so many things that we don't expect. And once we cross that street, you're like, oh, this is what it's like to be divorced. It's not about the job, it's not about the money, it's about the long and lonely nights when you're going through your process of grief, and then you enter the negotiation phase with yourself. And one of the parts of the grief cycle, when you're negotiating and you're saying, what would have I done different, right?
Mhm.
What was trivial and contributed to the demise of my marriage, and a mistake that I don't want to repeat. And obviously there are a lot of things, but there are some major fundamentals for making a relationship work. And I came to realize that it's not so much about what we do externally, or our ideal relationship, or what we think that the relationship should be, but what we do with ourselves, and
Absolutely.
getting to know ourselves, our subconscious processes. In Jungian psychology, will be the shadow. In classical conditioning, will be our triggers and
Mhm.
responses. And so 12 Rules for Marriage deals a lot with the things that we do that we're either not aware that we're doing, or that we're aware of them after the fact and we don't know how to fix. And
Yeah.
in it, we talk about how to develop trust, how to develop commitment, what a commitment means, how to tame your reactions, because I'm a product of trauma, and I've been through a lot of trauma in my life in many different ways, and that shapes you as a human being. So then when you're exposed to certain triggers, you take these instant reactions, and those instant reactions are harmful, they're damaging. And when it comes to the person by your side, they're the ones that suffer of the most because they see you all the time. So 12 Rules of Marriage deals with the first step to create that sustainable bond, and it's making sure that we are not our own worst enemies, right? That we are not the cause of our own pain.
Yeah, well, I think about my journey and when I'm talking to men, especially men who have been through divorce, and they're like, "Oh man, I just keep finding the same woman over and over again." And I'm like, "Dude, you got to look at yourself, man. Like, what are your patterns? What is it that you're bringing to the table or not? You know what I mean?" So yeah, that self-awareness is so vital.
It's crucial, and it's crucial not just in relationships but in life in general, and that it's why it's the very first chapter of the book.
Hmm.
Because if you're not going to read the whole thing and you're just going to read the first chapter at least, that's your gateway into knowing what it is that you need to do to change your life. Unfortunately, it's easy to live in a level of consciousness where we point the finger outwards and we blame destiny and we blame our luck. Uh,
Hmm.
but it's hard to take a look at ourselves and say, well, how am I sabotaging myself? How am I an accomplice of the results that I don't want to face? And that's the beginning of the personal alchemy, right? You're turning that lead into gold. You're lead because you sunk to the bottom of the ocean due to your own doings,
Yeah.
and then you have to transform yourself into a goal, into something valuable for yourself and then for others.
Well, and that's such an important first phase because it's not easy. You're not going to just, all right, now that I'm aware or, I'm looking at these patterns, okay, well, there's the awareness piece, but then you really have to do something about it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. There's practical things. I think somewhere in the book there's an analogy with having a car, and
Mhm.
and let's say you have a car that overheats every 2 or 3 miles, and you pull over to the side, you wait until the engine cools off, you put a little bit of water, and then you keep going. And sure, you put a band-aid on the problem, but you haven't really solved the problem. And it's
Right.
not until you become aware of exactly what the issue is with the car that you know what it is you need to do to fix it, and then make it last longer, or make a longer trip, or get rid of the issue. And so self-awareness is definitely the first step. Without self-awareness, I think that there cannot be any sustainable change. You might achieve short-term change, but
Right.
if you're not aware of the root and the role that you play in your results, then it's almost impossible to have sustainable
Yeah,
change.
you're just going to repeat the same pattern, same cycle,
Right,
and wonder how you
right.
got there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a horrible place to be because you're trapped in these invisible walls that uh, you're so close to them that you can see them,
Yeah,
and the last place that we want to look is ourselves, but that should be the first.
exactly. Yeah. That's the only place to start, really, in my book.
Yeah.
Self-awareness is the first step. Keep going.
There are some really important tenets. Some of them, and the ones that I personally wrestle with the most, is trust,
Mm,
commitment, uh, infidelity, or the temptation of infidelity, uh, triggers and negative responses. That was a big one because I learned to act in a self-defense manner ever since a very early age. I'm not gonna go into details why, but it's due to abuse and having to learn how to survive in an antagonistic environment.
sure.
And those things become a subconscious pattern, and I reenacted a lot of them in my relationships. But when I took a little bit of distance, I realized, oh, that wasn't that big of a deal. I shouldn't have acted like this or talked like this. There's violent communication, which is also a part of that aggressiveness and defensiveness,
Sure.
and also just doing your very best until the last minute. Because I think the biggest lesson that I took from my divorces, and I'm telling you, Bill, I've done a really perhaps even unhealthy amount of psychological self-fleshing and research, and I've tried to tie psychology with philosophy, with religion, just to see where the center line lies and how that can improve my relationships. And the one thing that I really took is that besides physical abuse, right, you can get through pretty much anything. And
Hmm.
um, I'm not advocating for people to stay in harmful and toxic relationships, because at the end of the day, it takes two people to
Of
make things
course.
work.
Yeah, of course.
But but uh, but at least at the end of that process, whether you make it to the last day on earth with the person that you love, or you don't, and you separate anywhere between now and then, it's much easier to walk that journey knowing that you did your best, and carrying a smaller cross for failing to meet your standards, right? Like you don't want to get there because hey, I was I cheated on my wife for so many
Hmm.
years, or I was addicted to drugs, or I ignore her because I prefer to be on my phone, or whatever, right? Like you
Hmm.
want to know that you did your very best to be the best human being that you can. And that's two blessings hidden in one, because one, you have less to contend with after the process is over, and also you have improved the relationship with yourself, and have become a more valuable part of society, whether it is for your immediate environment, like your children, or your community, the world. Maybe you write a book, or you write a music album, or you become a life coach,
Hmm.
or you have a podcast like yours, right? And then if you still crave that love, and you still crave that companionship, and that partner, for the journey of life, which I think we're wired to do. I don't
Sure.
think the solo path is it's a real thing. I think even Samurai Jack fell in love at the end of the episodes.
Yeah.
Then you're actually a better partner. You can show up better for that person, and that person will value you more, and therefore you're also gonna be able to identify someone that it's along your wavelength.
Yeah, and that's where I start with my relationship coaching is I start with the individual, I start with you, and you got to get you together and you feel good about you, and like you said, becoming your best self. You got to do that first, and that in itself, raises your confidence and builds trust in yourself, and having the strength to be vulnerable and the courage to really, express your feelings and that kind of thing. And then your frequency is much higher at that point, and you're going to attract the similar frequency. All you can have control over, of course, is your own stuff. And then you bring that best stuff to the relationship. And if you're both doing that, man, I just did an episode about should I stay or should I go?
Yes, I saw that. It was a great episode.
If you're both giving it your all, I say in the podcast that I had a therapist that said the quickest way out of a relationship is to have both feet in. Don't have one foot out the door. And when you give it your all, then you can walk away with your head high and say, I did the best I could. Yet when you give it your all, you're giving a good chance of sustaining that relationship.
100%. And funny you mentioned, because the chapter on commitment approaches it from that exact angle. Because people think, or people, well, let's not talk about people. Let's talk about me. I used to think that commitment was not being unfaithful to your partner, right? I
Mhm.
thought that that's what commitment meant, or to go to work every day and do whatever it takes to maintain the relationship. But commitment, it's so much deeper than that, and it starts at a thought level. It
Yeah.
starts at the thought level where you make the choice to be with the person. You're not just with the person. Alan Watts said, freedom isn't free unless you're free to be bound. and
Right.
and and so once you agree to be bound to someone, that's when things change, because suddenly you don't have a million options, you don't have a million exit strategies, you don't live with one eye open. You know that you're in it 100%, and and that puts you in a situation where you have to give it your best.
Yeah. And for me, my fourth marriage, I feel more free in my life than I've ever felt because of that, the exact same thing you're saying, and that's what it feels like to be in a sustainable relationship, that you're free to be completely who you are. and you're being loved in spite of it. You know
Eh,
what I
eh,
mean?
it's really mind-boggling that I tell my wife all the time because they bring out the best in you because they just don't expect that. There's something to be said about that because that comes with emotional maturity and going through that stage of grief enough times to come to a conclusion of what is actually really important, right? And once you get there, unfortunately, you don't get to that level of wisdom without having to lose things multiple times and having to reinvent yourself and really knowing that when you lose absolutely everything, well, what's the most important thing? So that's a beautiful thing. It really to be in a loving and sustainable relationship, when you look at it that way, I think marriage is probably the greatest gift that we can have because your spouse is gonna last you longer, hopefully, than your job, than your car, than your physical fitness, and your dreams and your career. Than the guy nagging you to put those reports in by Friday. And
Right.
and once you realize that and you start, not making it work, but putting in the work to actually build that emotional haven for you, then things just bloom and you come out from a different standpoint. If you
Yeah.
get a text message, or let's say you wake up and you wake up 10 minutes too late and you're late for work and you freak out and you're in that state of mind that it's reactive and defensive, everything sucks. Traffic is worse, idiots are more stupid,
Yeah.
and right, and you get there and you think you're going to lose your job and you're on edge the whole time, and then your results stem from your emotional state. If you're in a good place, if you have enough time, if you're composed, if you have your coffee, your meditation, whatever you do, your results also show that.
Right.
And in relationships, if you don't work on yourself, if you don't know what kind of ripples you're causing in the lake of your life, then you're gonna keep creating the same ripples that you're trying to avoid, and
Yeah.
that's the problem.
And that's why being open to feedback is so important, rather than getting defensive. No, I didn't. Blah, blah, blah. It's tell me more. Tell me how I did that because I
Yes.
don't want to do that to you. Or,
Yes.
at least I understand where you're coming from, right?
No, I think I heard Jordan Peterson. He
Mm.
he talked to someone who I forgot what the guy's name was, but he said that the original meaning in Hebrew for the word spouse or wife is a help against yourself.
Mm.
And when you look at it that way, you're like, okay, my wife is not nagging me. She's telling me something that I really need to know if
Exactly.
I want to continue having a good time, right? If I want to improve, and Gabor Mate said, in a marriage, you find your biggest dream, but also your biggest nightmare.
That's right.
Um, and that I think it's also a huge thing that you cannot get anywhere else but marriage, because when your spouse brings out the worst in you,
Hmm.
and it's not because and that sounds like they're doing it on purpose, but they don't.
No.
Unfortunately, they get to know you so well and they share so many experiences with you, they eventually, your soft buttons get pressed,
Right.
and sometimes you forget that you have those until they come out. And that's the opportunity for you to turn into gold. That's the opportunity when you're, oh, this is not cool. I get
Yeah.
to work on this now, and nobody else can make you see it but your wife or your husband or whoever you're with.
Yeah. They can be our biggest teachers in that case if you're
Yes.
open to growing and learning versus just staying where you are and not budging and see how far that takes you.
It won't, and unfortunately, the only constant is change. So just being hard headed and staying in a rut, it's just gonna keep you in the rut. It's not. You have to be open minded to change, and you have to welcome change, and you have to welcome feedback, and understand that we are, I don't know how many billions of people on this earth, and every person has their own unique point of view. And the more that you can see their point of view, you don't have to make it your own, but at least you
Right.
can see it.
We all want to be seen and heard versus right or wrong. It's just, this is my experience, or that's
Yeah.
that's her experience. I understand her experience. It's not necessarily mine, yet I can understand it and I can, acknowledge it.
That's right. Yeah, we want to be seen and heard, but we don't want to see and hear. Once you get past that little burden, then that's when you really start to improve your life, I think.
Yeah. And I think too, a big part of marriage is acceptance. And I talk often, John Gottman talks about the unsolvable problem. And what do you do with that? Well, you can accept it that it's an unsolvable problem. We're not going to go anywhere with it. So we can just put this under the table and accept it and move on and not have to have a perfect relationship exactly the way I want it. Or if that's enough, that particular problem is unsolvable and, well, I'm going to walk away. But give it a chance, man.
Yeah, and I love John Gottman, by the way.
Yeah.
Uh, it also comes with a little bit of Zen philosophy because something I learned with my kids. Right? My parents or my dad used to be like, "Oh, I'm being so patient with you, but you're wearing my patience out." And I
Getting on my last nerve.
right, and I inherited that until I came to realize that it's not other people that I'm being patient with, but myself.
Hmm.
And when I dug deeper, I realized that the gap between my expectation and my reality was my expectation.
Yeah. And those
And
expectations
and
lead to disappointment.
100% or worse, right? It blows my mind to hear that 58% of the divorces in the United States are due to irreconcilable differences. I mean, two people cannot come to a middle ground or an agreement on so many things that they think it's better to destroy the future they envision and the dreams they envision. And sometimes it takes people 20 years, I mean, to destroy a life
Yeah,
and hurt their children, because it's not just you that's going to go through the pain. Your kids are going to absorb a lot of that for their lifetime,
absolutely. Yeah.
just because we are so married to our bad habits and to our expectations, and we can just let them go. Because John Gottman would say, yeah, the unsolvable problem, but then I will challenge him and say, well, why is it a problem? Just because you think it's a problem doesn't mean it's an actual problem. So if you're willing to change your belief about what it is, then you will no longer feel the emotions attached to it. If you don't think it's a problem anymore, you don't feel the need to solve it.
Yeah. It's like reframing that it's a problem, reframing it
Exactly.
to say, oh, this is an opportunity for us to grow, for us to move forward and see how we do with this versus
Yeah.
it's a problem. So therefore, irreconcilable differences.
Yeah. And the other thing is that we're really not wise enough. I mean, we deem things to be a problem because we're afraid that taking that path is going to lead to somewhere we don't want to be.
Right.
And so we want to fix that before we get to the place that we fear to be. But number one, we unfortunately we get to the place we fear to be by trying to cling to these problems and solutions and fighting for them to be solved. And also, I don't think we're wise enough to know that that's an actual problem, or that that's going to lead to that very specific outcome that we fear. I Not in a million years. If you told me at 10 years old, look, if you can tell me exactly where you're going to be when you're 41, I will give you $1 billion. I did not know. I when I was 17, I said I'm never getting married. I'm never having kids, and here I am, married 3 times. My kids are my thing. I love them.
I was never going to get a divorce, and here I went through it 3 times.
Maybe the lesson here is never say never.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm thinking about your book, and is there anything else in there that we need to know? I mean, I really appreciate your format of your book. I wanted to say
Thank
because
you.
you relate these stories, you make yourself so vulnerable in them, so that I think it lowers the guard to say, hey, wow, this guy's really open and he shares his soul, and that helps us to grow when we see others doing the same. It's kind of like you were saying, like being stuck in your familiar patterns, and I think the broad picture here is us as men being conditioned a certain way. So we're really going to resist a lot of this stuff that you and I are talking about because, oh man, that's too uncomfortable for me. I can't do that.
Yeah, I put a lot of intent in the book. I didn't just write it to pull out a book and publish something out there. I really dug into moments that I think many of us wrestle with as a collective, especially guys.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right, we are conditioned. I was conditioned to be the toughest of the tough, not just by the parenting style that I was a product of, but
Mm-hmm.
also the environments that I lived. Moving around the world so many times makes you grow a thicker skin. Getting divorced at 24, that really put a shell over me, you know. But there's no other way around it, and so I appreciate that you noticed that, because I took it from saying, hey, listen, we all suffer from this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you can end up being really cool. But it's a common thing that we contend with, and I'm not
Yeah.
just saying this. The proof is it's everywhere you look. It's in philosophy, it's in mythology, it's in cartoons. I mean, all of these monsters and enemies that we're fighting with, they all have a
Yeah.
name and they all have a purpose, and these are many of the things that we wrestle with in marriage. But I also I try to give the reader first the experience in the flesh, then the sort of the background process of why and how I came to accept the change, because I opposed it. I really did oppose it. It was always everybody else's fault until I realized that I was kept repeating the same mistake, and I'm like,
Yeah.
the only constant is me.
Playing that
Um,
blame game. Yeah.
oh yeah, it's so easy to be mad at everyone else and hold
Yeah.
resentment and hate and be like, yeah, see. And then I gave a practical science-based tool at the end, so you can actually try it for yourself, right? I've read so many self-help books that they just sort of they cover things at a very general level. I wanted to give uber premium content, so the 10-15 bucks that you spend on that, which I think is the price of a Starbucks latte nowadays, it really gives you a chance to experience the state in which you are in and that I'm in, and that you can explain to anyone what it's like to be in a solid and stable relationship, and how you can grow as a human being, and then how you can grow with everyone around you, and spread that love. And you don't need to be weak about it. You can be strong and vulnerable and loving
Yeah.
and firm, so yeah, so that's pretty much it. I just hope that the readers find it relatable and useful, and even if just one person, it helps one person, my goal has been accomplished.
I feel like we're on the same level there because that's my whole intent too. It's this love mission I have, man, to spread more love in the world. And can't we all just get along, right?
Listen, all you look at the really wise people, and they'll tell you the same thing. The salvation of man is through love, by love. There's no way around it. There's just no way. I've been there. I've made the money. I had the luxury life. I had the lustful life. I had the travel life. I had the fame life.
Yeah.
And the void in your heart is never fulfilled until you come back home and you feel loved and you love someone else. And I think that's the greatest gift on earth.
Yeah, I feel you, good brother. Thank you so much, man.
It's my
I,
pleasure.
I, I wish you so much success with this book. I
Thanks.
encourage all my listeners to pick it up because it's some really great stories in there that are relatable, and also, like you said, the ways to live and to embrace and embody what you're offering, not just fluff. It's real stuff. I
Yeah.
encourage everyone to go for it.
Thank you.
So, for the listeners who want to get your book, how do they go about doing that?
They can visit my website, victorguisfredi.com. I'm going to have the book released in the next few weeks. If a listener is interested in getting the book, but the book is not published yet, they can sign up for my newsletter and they'll be notified when the book is available.
Awesome. And I'll make sure those links are in the show notes as well.
Thank you. So a lot of years of research and thousands of dollars in seminars and this is and that. And there's just so many millions of things that don't work. And then the handful of the ones that do, they're in the book.
There you go. Awesome. All right, Victor, thank you so much for taking the time, and I wish you so much success.
It's a pleasure, Bill. Thanks for having me.
And that will bring an end to this bonus episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast. 12 Rules of Marriage, a blueprint for sustainable love, with author and coach Victor Guisfredi. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. I thank you for listening. And thanks again to Victor Guisfredi for sharing his wisdom with us. You can find the link to Victor's website and his books in the show notes. And make sure you check out the next episode of the Man on the Path to Love podcast, The Lonely Season, Navigating the Holidays in or Out of Relationship episode. And until next time, keep your heart open and stay on the path to love.